Well, good evening, everyone, and I'm very grateful that Shruti, in introducing me, didn't call me the late Dr. Tharoor, but I am late, and I apologize. I came came from from this wonderful airport of yours, and the heavens opened up when we were coasting along comfortably after 10 or 15 minutes, and thereafter, even on the highway, the traffic ground to a halt, and not even a particularly orderly halt. So I began to despair if I would at all make it tonight, and I'm apologizing to all of you who had to wait, and I am very grateful to Professor Ahmed for having filled the breach so admirably, and to all of you for your patience. But it really is a privilege and a pleasure to be here to celebrate Sudha Murty's 200th title. 29 books, she tells me, 200 titles because the books have appeared in various editions, translations, and so on. But in many ways, this book is particularly satisfying because it actually is derived from a number of her other published works. And in some ways, it's sort of a weekend Sudha Murty, or the best of Sudha Murty, because you get a very interesting flavor of her writing style, her concerns, her interests, and if I may say so, her heart. It really is a deeply enjoyable and satisfying book to read. I have to confess that it brought me to tears on a few occasions because it is so moving. She writes, as many of you know, I mean, you wouldn't all be here if you weren't already familiar with her writing, but she writes with great lucidity and great simplicity. It's very interesting because hers are stories which could as easily be read to yourself silently or read aloud. I think that in many ways there couldn't be a better collection of stories to be read aloud because each story is simple, self-contained. Without exception, every story imparts a lesson, a message. Like the old days when you had to have a moral lesson in the fable at the end of it. She doesn't spell it out for you, but there is always a lesson in every story. And there is not one there that doesn't make you think, doesn't make you smile, doesn't make you feel very deeply moved. And at the same time, what is striking is that every story appears to be a true story. And every single story involves episodes of her own experience, her own life, from various stages of her life. There are stories where she's recounting something that happened when she was a child, and there are stories that could have occurred this year or last year. But at the same time, what you're seeing through these stories is the sensibility of somebody who has truly led a remarkable life. Here is someone who actually had the experience of being the only girl in her engineering college. Can you imagine what it must have felt like? First of all, to overcome the objections and concerns, even of well-meaning family, friends, parents, and so on, to actually go there, because girls didn't study engineering before she did. And then, for example, to be told, sorry, we have no ladies' toilet in this place, which was an eye-opener for her, because neither the faculty nor the students included any women. To put up with various kinds of ragging, inconvenience, teasing, and so on. And finally, to emerge top of the class, as well as with a whole set of friends who she refers to as her brothers, whom she stayed in touch with over the years. This is already something quite extraordinary. The second is the writing, because she begins writing early on in Kannada, and she does so with all the pains and sorrows and tribulations that struggling young writers have to go through. Rejection slips, not being paid, not even daring to ask for money for her first book, subsequently having manuscripts turned down, discovering, as it were, the art of writing by doing. I've always felt you can't really be taught to write. It's a controversial subject, and maybe when Sudhaji said she wants a conversation about it, we'll probably have that conversation. But there is really no formula, no recipe. It seems to me the way you write is as much you as the way you speak or the way you breathe. And clearly, if you read the way Sudhaji writes, I think you know Sudha Murty. You know the person, you know the mind, and you know the spirit that animates her interests. She has now written both in Kannada and English. I guess it's fair to say over the recent years, more in English than in Kannada, though obviously everything is translated. And I would argue you don't give translators too many headaches because your meaning is unambiguous and the tone is very, very direct, conversational, and accessible. So that if you want to derive anything from the book, what you read is what you get. You're getting the author whole, you're getting her sensibility, you're getting her feelings, you're getting her opinions when she chooses to express them. They're very clear and very blunt. And at the same time, you have a certain understated humanity that comes through in every single story. It's an extraordinary collection. I think this is the one that if all of you are too busy to read all her 29 books, this is the one that I would urge you to begin with, and thereafter you will not be able to resist delving into the others. She is here today, so I'm going to really stop and let her talk about the book herself, and enables us to reach out to each other. That is present right through many of the stories. There is obviously a lot of compassion, a lot of generosity, and a lot of philanthropy. That's what she does, that's who she is. But there is also in that process, there are also a couple of sharp-tongued stories where she's not very kind about the people she's writing about, nor do they deserve any kindness. But then this is a lady who's kind to strangers all the time, but there are a couple of stories where you'll see why she's not. And all of these elements, it seems to me, are also reflective of the kinds of influences that have made her who she is. So in many ways, this book is partly a step towards an autobiography. I feel I know you almost as if I have read a book about your life, even though that's not what the book is. The book is about people she's met, incidents that have occurred, and each one is very, very well constructed. That's the difference between your grandmother telling you a story and Sudha Murty writing it, because she is a professional writer. And the stories are well crafted. They usually end in just the right way, at just the right point, and often in just the right tone or the right sentence. So I don't want to imply that these are just that simple. There is a certain art in every good writer's work, and that art is there. But honestly, this book can be read by anybody from 10 to 100 and beyond without, I think, any difficulty in feeling the same emotions I felt when reading them, and I believe without in any way diluting the admiration and the respect one has for the very fine human being and the very gifted writer who has produced this book. So once again, congratulations, Sudha Murty, on Here, There and Everywhere. And let's hope the book is read here, there and everywhere. Thank you.
Wow, that was so very well spoken by Dr. Tharoor. And I think the beauty about this conversation right here was that while he was speaking about the book, if all of you would have observed Mrs. Sudha Murty, her eyes were closed as if she was narrating all her stories and all her experiences deep inside within her. So without much ado, we would like Mrs. Murty to come and speak about her journey and felicitate the wonderful crowd amongst us here today.
Good evening to everyone, and ellarigu namaskara. On a Friday evening when it's pouring outside a traffic jam, I would not have come. But still I have come, it's my book, and thank you very much for coming all the way. It really means a lot to me. It's very difficult to tell what I really want to tell. Writing is much easier than telling that. However, my love for writing started when I was young, and I have written in my first chapter, The Tale of Many Tales, why I started writing and writing where it took me. And, you know, after 200 titles, out of that I think there's a statistics which even I don't remember. That's why I put it on the computer on an Excel sheet and go and, you know, search, you know, make the entire technology, I use it and find out, okay, how many Assamese, how many Bengalis, how many Kannada, how many Braille, etc. It is not the number, but the joy of writing, that's very, very important to me. Over a period of time, you know, it takes so much time actually. to come to this 200th title. In 2007, I had 100th title. In 10, 11 years, I have made another 100 books. That means there are 3, 4, 5 books I might have written into multiplied by 13 languages as easy as we can think of. The journey, I really, first of all, before I forget, few things I want to do. In India, you cannot be forgiven for two wrong things if you do anything. One is in marriage card. If you don't give a card, people will remember, in your marriage in 1978, you didn't give me a card. They will never forgive you. Even you are old, you are a grandmother, but 1978, the year you got married, I didn't receive a card. Second thing, in thanking. You didn't thank me on such and such a date, okay? These two are very scary things for me. So let me remember and thank all those people. But before that, I would like to have a small video which my brother has sent and who is very dear to me. Srinivas, I don't want to talk much about him because Vikram has already done. I consider he's one person in my life with whom I can spend hours together without getting bored and be very confident telling you are wrong, and still he will respect me the same, whatever my ideas. And he's a great companion to me in many ways, particularly in the pursuit of knowledge, in language. And I told Shini, you must come. But he couldn't make it. He's being a director and the head of the department, and Caltech is a big person. But for his older sister, he said, I will send you a video. Here the video from Srinivas to me. No, Maya is here. Maya has sent his daughter Maya, but Shini is Shini. So I want to see Shini on the screen.
Today we are gathered here for a celebration of Sudha Murty's 200th book. I'm Sudha's younger brother. I'm also a professor of astronomy at the California Institute of Technology, and until recently was the director of the Caltech Optical Observatories. I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend this joyous occasion, and doubly so because Sudha has dedicated this book to me. I'm touched by her gift to me, and so the least I can do now is to give an insider perspective into Sudha's mind with some emphasis on her formative years. We are a family of 4 siblings and separated by 3 years each. Sunanda is the eldest, then Sudha, Jayashree, and finally me. We grew up with no sibling rivalry. Our mother instilled in us a very strong sense of scholarship, and our father a formidable sense of duty. Furthermore, well ahead of their times, our parents let us be ourselves and realize our dreams. Sudha went on to become the first female engineer in northern Karnataka. In my case, my father encouraged me to take the best possible job, even if it meant leaving India. Sudha and I have overlapping interests, outlook, and values. When we were younger, people would comment that we looked alike. Now, that is of course literally skin deep, and I would say probably not very flattering to Sudha. We grew up in Hubballi. At that time, Hubballi had only one library next to the corporation building. At any given time, the library would allow each subscriber to check out only one book. However, Sudha and I had a voracious appetite to read books. So on weekends, we would pack up lunch and then spend the entire day at the library reading up to 6 books. Sudha's love for books has gone beyond reading. She is now writing books at a voracious rate. I have an interesting tidbit to share with you. Sudha wrote a review paper as a part of her final year project at the BVB Engineering College entitled Analysis of Transmission Losses of Power Lines. If memory served me right, it had nearly 400 references. I remember reading that paper and critiquing it for clarity of the English language and some technical issues. As a result of reading that paper, I still pay attention to this subject whenever I see it in the news. Sudha has become even more extrovert than my father, and I have become perhaps the most introvert of the family. Her social work has widened her understanding of this world, whereas I am now fascinated by other worlds. However, we still both retain our love for words and appetite for reading. It's just somewhat different. Sudha is still eager to hear from me the origins of an exotic word in the English language, which I know quite well, and equally eager to explain to me the meaning of rare words in Kannada and Sanskrit, which I don't know quite well. In my field, I'm a prolific writer of papers. However, today, I've not written a single book nor have any plans to do so. You see, fundamentally, the motivation and skill set for writing papers and books is extremely very different. So given that, it is doubly precious to me that Sudha has dedicated a landmark book, a double century, to me. Thank you.
First of all, I want to, in the long journey of 200 books in almost 40 years, I started writing when I was 15 or 16. Smaller, I'm sure as a writer, you start with, in teenage, a kind of an article, distant, romantic, tragedy and all, which I really don't value much now. But it started that way, and my first book came when I was almost 29 or 30. It was my backpack journey in US. Today, nobody will read that book, because it's a girl from Hubli going on a backpack sponsored by Narayan Murty was something unusual. So my very first book is dedicated to Narayan Murty, not because you're my husband, because you're my dear friend. That is a dedication I still remember and continue to do so. He's not because he's my husband, I respect as a dear friend of mine whom I know 45 years. So this book was, when I wrote this in Kannada, I was really scared. Who will publish a technical person like me, my book? I don't have any background of literature. But there was a famous writing publication, Kannada publishers place in Dharwad, which is known as literary hub of any Kannada writer, even today. That was Manohara Granthamala, and G.B. Joshi was the person, publisher, and he said, don't worry, it's a very unusual book I will do. Today G.B. Joshi is not there, but he laid the foundation stone for my writing and giving me confidence. Even though you are an engineer, you can still write. And his son is here. I'm extremely grateful, Ramakant Joshi, please stand up. He's my first publisher out of my 200 milestones, and thank you very much for my coming.
Publishing his books too now.
Okay, that'll be great.
Why I mean,
Okay. And in year 2000, November 12th, first time I published my English writing. Until that, actually I'm a Kannada medium girl, because I did physics, chemistry, mathematics, everything in Kannada. Up to age of 16, and I did not know to write a single sentence in English in the year 1966. But I started reading English, and year 2000, when I was 50 years old, I started writing English columns. And thanks to George, for a minute, George, where are you? George has to get up. You can't say no. It's a George, TJS George from Indian Express. He gave me a big break to write in English and told that is the way, you have to go ahead and write. You are a storyteller. Thank you, George. And I've dedicated one book to George also. I started in 2000. The moment my book came in English, suddenly the translation started in all Indian languages. And I have very good translators there. If you want to have a good translation, you should know that person very well. The person should understand you very well. So in my case, I've been very lucky. I have great translators whom I have not changed since 18 years. And here the Sonal Ben. Sonal Ben, please get up. Here, Sonal is my replica in Gujarati, and she has done all my Gujarati books. And it has been it has been published by R.R. Seth, Navratna Seth and his wife are here from Gujarat and Ahmedabad. They have come. Thank you very much, R.R. Seth family.
One sentence I want to recently I celebrated my 30th book. It's only because of her, because I never wrote anything but some love letters to my husband.